Hey, welcome back everybody. My name's Cody Low and Max here. We're here today to talk about performance assessment and how that relates to our strength and conditioning. So a lot of the times when athletes come in the door, they want to improve performance. And that's a really big question to answer, and how we can improve your performance, because it encompasses so many different variables. So today we're going to talk about what those variables are.
So one of the performance assessments that we do is more about how the individual is moving, and that one is called the SFMA. It's a movement analysis screening. We go through multiple movements, whether it's for your shoulder, neck, torso, hips, knees, ankles, all the above. Basically, we go through a whole screen to see how well we're moving and if we have any pain in any of those areas, or if we're just not functional in those areas. So if a person isn't able to get full depth on the squat test for the SFMA, then we know, okay, there might be some ankle issues, some hip issues, or some knee issues, right? That's one of the ways we're able to see what we need most for the athlete. Do we need to start just loading them up and giving them tons of strength training, or do we need to go over a lot of mobility work, core work, in order for them to correct these movements?
And how this relates to on-field performance is really, it comes down to movement economy. If when you're moving on the field and you need to change direction, but there's a lot of abnormal patterns in regards to how you move, you're going to be inefficient and slow at that movement. So what we're going to look at is, can you be competent as you move? Can you be efficient as you move? And well, that will help translate on to better on-field performance. A really important component to a lot of athletes, and really all sports, is lower body power. And one of the tests that we use is a vertical jump. And here at left we have a just jump mat that helps us assess that. How we would test your vertical jump is we'd get an individual step on the mat. Hands are going to be on their hips because we don't want the extra support or help of your arms. So again, we want to assess the lower body power, and we're going to ask them to jump as high as possible. Okay, Max, I want you to jump as high as possible. Go ahead, whenever you're ready. Great. Okay, that was a 35+ inch vertical. And this will tell us a lot of information. Okay, one, what is the jump height? And two, how did he execute that movement? So now we're looking back to how we combine that SFMA information with our vertical jump. Did we see the knees collapse in? Did we see a lot of forward hinging? Or was that individual able to load and really drive up? The next piece that we would do is a rebound jump. In a rebound jump, we're going to ask that individual to jump 5 times in a row. We're going to try and jump as high as possible and get off the ground as quickly as possible. And this gives us a metric called your RSI, okay? Your reactive strength index. And this helps us give a measure of how explosive you can be when you're sprinting, getting ready to jump. Okay? So again, Max is going to jump 5 times in a row, getting off as quickly to the ground, or getting off the ground as quickly as possible and as high as possible. Whenever you're ready. Great. And you can see he utilized more of an ankle dominant strategy to execute that jump, and that's critical to be a little bit more elastic. And again, we'll look at that information to help us understand, well, what is our movement strategy and what is the jump height. The third vertical jump height or assessment we're going to look at is a single leg jump. He's going to do one on his right, then one on his left. And again, we're going to look at the execution of movement as well as the symmetry in the jump height. Does his right leg help him go higher than his left leg? And if that's so, then as part of our strength and conditioning program, we'd look to correct that. Okay, Max, right leg first. Good.
Oh, tough.
And thankfully we did not blow out any ACLs today in our vlog. All right. And no, so you can see there was an asymmetry there. And that's really common for a lot of our athletes who, if they do 1 foot takeoff, their dominant leg will typically move a little bit more efficiently than their other leg. Now that we've looked at the vertical jumps, we're going to look at the horizontal jumps. And we're going to utilize the broad jump for that. The broad jump can tell us a lot of information in regards to that athlete's ability to accelerate. So if you're a soccer player, basketball player, even a volleyball player who needs to move on court, if you're efficient at horizontal, then you're going to be able to move on court or on field a lot faster. So what Max is going to do, he's going to jump as far forward as you can, and then we're going to measure from his heel. Okay, Max, biggest jump possible. Great, so I would then measure from where his heels are back to the start line. And similarly to our vertical jump, we would do a single leg broad jump. And again, we would look at the movement ability as well as the jump outcome, the distance between your right and left. I won't make you do that.
Oh, thank God.
So those are some of the assessments we look at in clinic. Now, if we're working with a team or academy or club at their practice facility, we would also look at things like sprints, so 10 meter, 20 meter, a change of direction test, how well and efficient they can change direction, as well as an assessment test. We would look at utilizing the yo-yo, 30 to 15, any sport-specific endurance tests that help us better assess what your physical capacities and capabilities are, and that would help us drive our programming when working with you as an individual or as a team in general. Looking at the different endurance assessments we would utilize, 30-15, yo-yo, the beat test, we've all heard those type of names before, but what do they really mean and when would we use them? As an example, most sports, looking at basketball, volleyball, and soccer, are intermittent in nature, meaning it's not just continuous on. There's a stop and go nature to the sport. So we would then want to match that endurance assessment to the energetic demands of that sport. So a common assessment that we would use, the yo-yo, we would use that for volleyball, basketball, and soccer. And the way that that's executed is you run 20 meters, back 20 meters, similar to the beat test, but then you get a 10-second recovery. And that helps match the game demands or the match demands of those sports. If you're an endurance runner, then we would look at more of a continuous run. So similar to like a Cooper test where we would get you to run 12 minutes continuously, where we could then get a metric like your MAS. So we would, again, as part of your assessment, we're going to sit down and look at what are your movement demands and what are your energetic demands. And again, as part of your strength conditioning program, how we can improve all of those variables and components. A lot of the times, sporting coaches look at how their athletes are doing in their test. What is their yo-yo score? What are their sprint scores? And they first kind of ignore how they are at their sport. So remember, performance assessment is critical to enhancing on-field play, but as a component of that evaluation of that athlete. And that's where we advocate utilizing professional strength conditioning coaches to help with understanding the results and how that mixes with what they're seeing in the field of play. And we're potentially, if we have an athlete who's very good at the sport, but maybe can only last half of the match, where we can then be of benefit by then programming an appropriate conditioning program, or we see something in the movement screen that they are inefficient in their movement economy that they can then improve on here, which would then improve on-field play. So understanding what the results are saying and what tests to utilize helps give a snapshot of that individual and team that any coach is working with.
So when it comes to, for example, the different rep ranges, when we want different outcomes, whether it's more strength or hypertrophy, trying to gain muscle, those different ranges will change. Generally for hypertrophy, you want to be doing more repetitions, but obviously less of a weight because you need to be able to achieve those repetitions. And in terms of strength or explosive training, you're always going to see a lower rep range, not only to just reduce the amount of stress that's going through the body, but studies have shown that basically with those rep ranges, you're going to increase strength the most. And also, when coming back to that communication with the coaches, I remember when I used to coach basketball, we'd make our kids just run like crazy. And looking back, that was probably a bad decision because they're not getting the most benefit out of that, really, when outside of that, they're also doing their own training and ended up not being in their favor because they just got burnt out. And that's a big thing as well, is, okay, well, if we have a basketball player, for example, and he's always jumping, doing layup lines, doing all these kind of drills where they're jumping, and if they come into the gym and we don't know that they're jumping, and we want to make them jump higher, okay, then we make them jump more, then things kind of can get worse, right? Or they can get injured potentially, right? So it's having that conversation with the coaches and letting them know what we're planning on doing, and also figuring out what they plan on doing. And hopefully each party kind of sticks to their base of knowledge the most, right? Obviously we know the most about strength and conditioning. They know the most about the actual sport and what they need for the sport.
What's going to be important is when an athlete comes in here, on day one, we're not going to ask them to do a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
They're not going to come in and say, okay, you've never strength trained before in your life, let's see how much you can squat. We're not going to do that here. We want to see, again, their movement competency. Can they do a push-up? Can they do a bodyweight squat? And then through that visual assessment and ability of movement competency, then we are going to, in a smart manner, add load and see where potentially there is failure. But we're not necessarily going to go, what is the heaviest weight that you can lift? We want to see where the movement competency starts to fall apart there. And then we would work with the sporting coach to then help enhance those things. Usually with sporting coaches, they see what they see at practice. And a lot of times athletes, there's so many factors going into what they see at practice. Maybe they didn't sleep that well, they're tired, they haven't eaten that well, they're stressed, all these other things. And so when they see things on the court, on the pitch, not actually what they hope and expect. Whereas where we can add value is bring them in here, and where are the physical capacities and capabilities that are potentially limiting what they're seeing on there. And so then that relationship of what they see visually, our performance assessment, can then come together to really give us a clear picture of what needs to happen. Maybe it's just that your athlete needs to sleep. Maybe they don't need more training. Maybe they just need to eat. They need to hydrate. They need to sleep. So those are important conversations that we can work together with to answer as part of our performance assessment. I think what's really important to be aware of, this is only a component of view of an individual as an athlete. A lot of times when we go through performance assessment, athletes tend to get nervous because really we're putting a number to their ability. And that's not how we look at it. We're looking at it as a way to say, where are you really good? Can we make that better? And potentially where are you struggling with? And can we make that also better to improve performance? And then working together with you as an athlete and your coach to then create a well-rounded program so we're addressing everything so that you as an athlete can then be the best you.